we're here at the National 4-H Youth Conference Center in Chevy Chase, Maryland. And we have special guests with us who are the 1963 Report to the Nation team. This group was a very influential group in their day. The teamwork started in 1950. This particular group was here only for the 1963 year, and their special time was spent primarily here in Washington, D.C., but they also went to New York City. They met with businesses and with the national media. Here in Washington, D.C., this group had a very special treat, but I'm going to let them tell you about it. Not only did this group work here, but they also traveled around the country to New York, to Los Angeles, and some other spots along the way to tell the 4-H story through the media, to donor groups or prospective donors, and also to reach some national conventions, national association meetings. All the groups had different itineraries. Some of them worked primarily in Washington, D.C., New York, and maybe one other city. Some of them worked throughout the year. I want to introduce you to the team that is here today. We have Tony Meller, who was a 4-H'er from Arizona and is still a businessman in Arizona. Veronica Vimosi Hughes, who was a 4-H'er in the state of New York and is now a teacher. Don Weeks, who was a 4-H'er in Indiana and now is living and working in Nebraska. Faye Craig Shirley was a 4-H'er from Mississippi who now lives in North Carolina. Larry Pressler was a 4-H'er from the state of South Dakota, and he now lives here in Washington, D.C. Another one of our Report to the Nation team from 1963 was Alice Todd Carter. She couldn't be with us today in person, but she is going to be here on speakerphone. And so that is the 1963 National 4-H Report Team. We'd just like to ask you about where you were a 4-H'er, what some of your projects were, what was your favorite project and why, and then other than meeting a special person as a 4-H Report to the Nation delegate, what were some of your most outstanding experiences in 4-H? And last but not least, what did you learn in 4-H, or what about 4-H gave you your outlook or the skills that you have as an adult today? How did 4-H influence you as an adult?
I was only in 4-H for 5 years, and I had to really work at it to get where these kids got. And I had 23 projects my last year in 4-H, but my favorite project was the cow-calf project, where I'd raise cows and have calves and sell the calves. And then the money went into a savings for college, and it paid for my first year of college, along with some scholarships. And cow-calf project was just fantastic. And you know, 4-H has just done so much for all of us to make us mature adults most of the time. But I really look back to 4-H as helping me wherever I have been, wherever I go. I've been in a lot of community fundraisers, and I always look back to 4-H for helping me.
This is Ronnie, and I was raised on a small farm in upstate New York, one of 8 children, and we had a dairy farm, and I loved working outside. I chose to work more with my dad in the barn with the cows and working on the vegetable garden. Though I did a lot of sewing and ended up making my wedding gown and my wardrobe for college and clothes for my children. all these aspects I still do today as an adult. We have a nice vegetable garden and grow a lot of our own fruits, so I can and freeze all of those. But I think the biggest aspect of 4-H was my demonstrations, public speaking. It helped me be very secure and confident about talking in front of groups, and I became a school teacher, a math teacher, and it certainly helped me there.
So I have a similar thing to say, in that 4-H, certainly in terms of projects, we lived on a small 3.5 acre farm, but we had chickens and beef and all sorts of gardening projects that kept me busy all summer. Those projects really were the first time that I had real responsibility that I had to live up to, and that in itself was a big step forward. But I think the greatest experience I had was in leadership roles, first as a junior leader within my own club, and then moving into the county leadership role, and then finally into the state role. And these opportunities to do public speaking, to meet people of all walks of life, learn how to interact, were just terrifically valuable. And certainly now as a university professor, I find that being able to communicate with the school, the university students that we deal with, as well as all of the university administration and all of the politicians in the state, the 4-H background has just been terrific in allowing me to be comfortable in all of those roles.
I grew up in Louisville, Mississippi. I now live in North Carolina and have lived there for like 16 years. But I joined 4-H when I was about 10, and I guess I was probably 21 when I got out of 4-H, so it was about 11 years. But my favorite project was poetry. And I was a state poetry winner, and I would go to our county fair, and we would get 100 little baby chicks, and I would raise them, and then at the end of the year you would take back 12 grown chickens, and they would auction them off and use the money to buy more baby chicks for other 4-Hers. So I really liked the poetry project, and I think it opened, one thing that 4-H did for me was it opened doors to the world of travel. And I got to go to the National 4-H Poetry Conference in Kansas City, Missouri, and I did a demonstration on the incredible edible egg. And then I went there, and I just wanted to go to Washington, D.C., and then the Report to the Nation trip came along. I went to National 4-H Club Congress twice, so I think it made me want to travel more, but it also taught me a lot of life skills and leadership, and then it gave me, really more than anything else, probably self-confidence.
I'm Larry Pressler, and I really enjoyed similar 4-H activities to my colleagues here. I raised hogs, spotted Poland China hogs, and to this day I'm still very interested in, and I belong to a club in England that follows the development of hog breeds today, which everything has changed. But I also had some beef projects and some dairy and crops, which Don Weeks has really done a lot with in his lifetime. But I had a variety of projects. Also, I had a project in citizenship, and I had a project in electrical. Back in those days, they had a project where you could build an electrical motor and other electrical things around the farm and house. So I found that very valuable experience. I went to the University of South Dakota, and of course one of the most amazing moments in my life was being part of our group to meet President Kennedy in person a few months before he was assassinated. I never expected that would come. But and then I used this experience in the U.S. Army and the Foreign Service, and I was honored to be elected to the House and Senate from my state. And since that time I've been teaching, mostly college teaching, and I still use my 4-H experiences to this day.
I grew up in Tutwiler, Alabama, and moved away while my husband was in the military for about 6 years, and we moved back So I still live on our family farm of 400 acres, and my son is now managing the farm, and he has a big herd of cattle, and he is a veterinarian. So I'm right back home where I was to begin with. And my projects that I enjoyed the most, and I guess that I still enjoy, were my foods and foods preservation projects. And what I learned that still stands me in good stead was the ability to work with people of all kinds and to be organized. And I think I still am able to do those things. So those were my experiences that stand out in my mind from my 4-H experience in Pella.
Well, obviously the greatest thing, and I think we'll all agree that the greatest thing in the world at that time was to meet President Kennedy. We were in his office by himself for 45 minutes, and he asked us all questions at different parts of each of us. He had different questions for us. He knew who we were, and it was exciting. I mean, one of the things he asked me or told me was he and Bobby worked on a dude ranch in Benson, Arizona during the summer. And then he ragged me a little bit about my dad's 10,000 acre cattle ranch versus Don's 3.5 acre farm, and how he probably made more money than I did on the cattle ranch. But it just was a tremendous, fascinating experience. And then we went on to meet all sorts of political leaders, media people, actors and actresses. We traveled for 10 days, I believe it was. We were 4 days in Washington, 3 in New York, and 3 in Los Angeles. And it's the greatest travel experience I've ever had. And I think the rest of the group would agree with all of that, but you probably have different stuff to say.
For me, it was my first airplane ride. Never having left home other than to go to college. So that was very exciting just to take an airplane ride. And then once we met up in Washington, doing TV interviews or radio broadcasts, we did a lot of that. 2 or 3 of us would go to one station and talk to a moderator, and the others would go to another station. So, and we met with a lot of very important business people who were sponsoring 4-H at that time, and thanked them for contributing to 4-H and told them what we were doing, how we were benefiting from it.
I think for all of us, meeting President Kennedy was by far and away the most important aspect of our trip. But one of the things that I was very impressed with was the organization behind our trip, that everything ran smoothly. It was my first time being exposed to real professionals and setting up meetings, making sure everything was done on time, everybody was where they were supposed to be. I was impressed with the training that we received before we went out to talk with the media, before we went out to talk with business people. So that by the time we finished up in California, I think all of us felt, well, maybe not like pros, but we certainly felt very confident in talking with business people, politicians, and that was a terrific experience.
Well, during the Report to the Nation trip, I think one of the most important things that the trip does is it's really a true public relations forum for the 4-H organization. And I think truly we were ambassadors for 4-H as we went around the country and met people in government and business and entertainment. I had majored in history and social studies in college, and I was honored that I had already met Senator Stennis from Mississippi, but he took me to the Senate restaurant for lunch, and we didn't know that one of our own was going to later become a U.S. representative and U.S. senator. But I remember Alice met Senator Sparkman from Alabama at the time. And then when I went to New York, I was on a TV show called Questions with Betty Furness as the hostess. And the other guests were E.G. Marshall and Wyatt Cooper, who's Anderson Cooper's father. And So that was an interesting experience. And then we got to go to Radio City Music Hall to meet the Rockettes, to see the Rockettes and to see Victor Borge. And then in LA we met Art Linkletter. And I loved Disneyland. So that was fascinating.
Well, it was a magical week, just absolutely magical now that I think of it. And I don't think it ever could be recreated or whatever, to go from meeting the President of the United States to get on an airplane. And I think we went to New York, and then we flew to California. We were on a show with Art Linkletter, and who at that time was the greatest person in the Midwest, at least, to listen to. And it was just awesome, really, when I think about it. And I don't think I've ever recreated or had experience a week like that in my life. I've been privileged to do a lot of things. In fact, Faye, you were kind enough to let me come along to your lunch with Senator Stennis, and later I served in the Senate with Senator Stennis. And when I first met him there, I said, "Well, I've met you before." He said, "You have?" Oh, yes, during the 4-H report to the nation. But anyway, it was just a magical week. And now I think that that President Kennedy liked to reach out to the agricultural community to a certain extent. I mean, indeed, it had been done before, but in particular, since he was from the East Coast, and I don't think that he was, I think, liked to reach out to the agricultural community a bit, and this was one way of doing it. That was my assessment, because in retrospect, knowing how presidents' time goes these days, how valuable President Obama's time is, or anybody's time is, it's rare for a president to spend that much time with a group. And so I also think it was a two-sided thing. I think he wanted to show the farmers and the agricultural people that he was concerned about them.
Mm-hmm. Alice, what do you have to add?
Well, I thought it was a fantastic 10 days and just an experience I've never had since, and we were treated just royally, and we were trained exceptionally well to do the job that we were there to do, to serve as ambassadors for the 4-H nation. And I have a memory of our trip that's a little bit different. After we met Kennedy, we went out in the hallway when we were on the Capitol Hill, and Lyndon Johnson was out in the hallway, and we met him, and I have a picture, and he's pointing his finger at me saying, "You go home and call my wife because she's from Alabama." And Lady Bird was indeed reared in the county right next to mine. And I did go back to the hotel and try to reach her, but she was with Senate ladies rolling bandages for the Red Cross. So I missed her, but I do have that picture, and he signed it for me, and so that was a little bit different from the rest of our experience. And then a funny thing I recall is when we went to California, we went to see, and I think it was the Mike Douglas show, and the fan dancer Sally Rand was on, and nobody knows who Sally Rand is today, but she was, a burlesque fan dancer, and I just thought that was kind of interesting that we would, end up on a show watching her. So those were two things that stand out in my mind.
Very good, Alice.
All 6 of us came together from different parts of the country, and we had been selected in Chicago at National 4-H Club Congress, and I guess there were 26 national winners, and 12 were in achievement, 12 in leadership, and 2 in citizenship, and they interviewed all of us and picked 3 girls and 3 guys to make this fantastic trip. And I was a national achievement winner. I know you were leadership, achievement with me, leadership, and you were citizenship. And so it was just fantastic that we got to meet each other, and we kept in touch, a lot of us.
Yeah.
Yes, I was a leadership winner also.
Oh, I forgot, Alice. I'm sorry.
We kept in touch somewhat. Now, Larry, I have not heard from, but I read about him in the paper. But the rest of us have kept in touch, I think, to some extent.
And I think that we feel a sense of collective gratitude towards 4-H that we really haven't been able to express. And
Right.
I hope we can find some way of having a national program of urging more people to give money in their wills to the heritage, the 4-H heritage or something, because I'd like to express my gratitude for that week and for the 4-H, which just sitting here, I just realized how much that all meant to me. It's reinforced, just coming to this meeting, which Don Weeks, incidentally, I got to give special recognition to Don Weeks for getting us together. It would not have happened without Don Weeks. And
Yes,
he's done
I
all the
agree.
work.
He
and
certainly
he's
did
done
a
all the work.
wonderful job of organizing everything and keeping us all
Yes.
informed of what was going on. And I'm so sorry I can't be there with you all personally, but I love you all.
Yes, well,
Yeah. So I want to reflect just a bit on 4-H and what it meant to people, young people, especially in rural areas when we were in 4-H. It was one of the few avenues that we had to really become part of an organization, become leaders in that organization, and be able to spread our wings. It was a great opportunity that if it hadn't been for 4-H, we wouldn't have been participating in leadership roles.
I think we all agree that for 4-Hers all around the country that it's a great program, and it can do nothing but benefit you in your leadership role and your future, going to college and getting out there and helping your community get what you got back from 4-H. And us 6 really did that, and we've all gone back some way and done something with 4-H afterwards. We all still love it and help it as much as we can.
I think all of us are also very happy to see what's happened with involvement of children in urban areas coming into 4-H, seeing the opportunities they now have, that the same kind of opportunities that we had.
And maybe if you haven't helped directly as like a 4-H leader or volunteer, I know in North Carolina I belonged to the North Raleigh Optimist Club for about 9 years, and we would help send 4-Hers to the 4-H camps in North Carolina each year. Most of them were disadvantaged youth that couldn't have gone otherwise. And my mother had me volunteering at like 9 years old. And I feel like I've been a volunteer my whole life in the military, all the organizations where I volunteered, and then I'm still a Master Gardener volunteer today in North Carolina. But we have the junior Master Gardeners, and many of which are 4-H children also. And so I think you can help through other organizations. You can help 4-Hers.
I've been 4-H clothing judge at the New York State Fair for many years. And it's always interesting to see how trends, how things have changed over the years, who's sewing what now, and it's just been a very interesting and fun job.
So I have one more thing to add. It was thanks to 4-H and actually our county extension agent I was introduced to my wife, and we became acquainted and finally married. So it has lots of benefits.
Alice, anything else you'd like to say?
I must say that I have not had a connection with 4-H actually since I was in college. It just is not quite as important an organization in my community as it was at one time. But I have taken what I learned in 4-H and have passed it on to my own children and to children in the community. And I work with, now currently work with the Historical Association, and we do try to reach younger people in our community through that venue. But as far as actually being connected with 4-H, I have not been.
Over the years, worked with a lot of 4-H club members and tried to give them recognition. I think part of the reason we have such a great country, even though we have a lot of problems, is because we all work at little things, and there's a lot of everyday tasks and garden variety type things that all add up a great deal for the strength of society. And I fear a little bit that maybe we're losing that. And I hope 4-H is able to address young people or to help them be involved in cities and in rural areas, because it's part of the fabric of our nation, and I was proud to be a tiny part of it. But I think it's a much bigger thing collectively than we realize, and we were very lucky to be a part of that.
Well, I'll say the last thing. I guess we're ready to wrap this up. We all thank 4-H tremendously for what they did for us that 10 days. It couldn't have been a better trip, and they were superb leaders and helpers with us, putting us through the 10 days, and we met fabulous and great people, and we all thank 4-H very, very much for what they've done for us.
Thank you for helping us reclaim this part of the National 4-H history. The Report to the Nation team history has been lost, and now we've been able to reclaim at least the 1963 segment. And I'd just like to thank you for being with us today, for having the idea of getting together as a Report to the Nation team on your 50th anniversary. Thanks so much.